This is Karen with newclevelandradio.net, and it's time for Avoid the Maze. The music that you hear in the background is called Enough, and the composer and performance of this music is Jeff Brisbane, a very dear friend. And today, our guest on Avoid the Maze is James Perdue. And James, I have to tell you, when I read your bio, I knew the music enough really fit you because so many people walk around saying they don't have enough of things. But you know
Mhm.
what? When you face a challenge and you decide how you're going to move forward, you have enough. You can never outgrow it. And so, to our listeners, as I was reading this, James, it made me think of last week's um, televised football game
Mm.
when DeMar got hit, but he got back up. Everybody thought he was okay. And then all of a sudden, there he was on the ground.
Oh, yes.
And for those of us watching TV on that evening, we thought, oh my God, a horrible accident has happened on the field and we've all witnessed it. But interestingly enough, he got the care he needed immediately. But in addition to that, he's had a lot of willpower. And that's something that so many of us don't understand that we have. And from what I understand, you were playing football and you got injured, and it wasn't so easy as just standing up and brushing it off. So give us a little bit of story behind yourself. And I'm going to tell you, I like the Hulk that's right behind you there.
There you go. Yeah, some people said that my little sports room is better than my story. So, but yeah, Damari, yeah, he took a hit, and his wasn't out of the ordinary hit. I mean, it was just a regular hit, and they say it happened right between the heartbeat. Is what made his heart fibrillate, and of course, doing the CPR and shocking him with those defibrillators they have everywhere. I say hopefully they're everywhere nowadays. And yeah, so he is doing tremendously great and everything. So I'm glad that he's come through. But for me, what had happened is I was 2 weeks into college on a baseball scholarship. I was one of them hoping to go professional, and not that we were poor, but we were knocking on the door of poor growing up. And so my father died when I was 16. So here my mom is raising three of us, three boys with her. So being an athlete, one day I wanted to be able to make that big money and buy her a house and car and stuff like that for her. And used to be a long time ago, they had what was called you can get a mail ordered bride. And so I was going to get a mail order groom for my mom, just kidding with her since daddy died. But I was in college for 2 full weeks and got to play one college game. I was the only freshman that started. And the very next day, a bunch of us were playing a pickup game of football. All right, no helmets, no pads, but we were playing tackle football. And I scored a touchdown. And what happened right before that, though, here's what's so interesting thing is we'd been out there probably 2 hours playing. And so I left the huddle, said I was done playing for today, need to get my stuff ready for class the next day. And I heard someone say, we need someone to run the ball. I stopped and turned around and said, all right, I'll come back for one more play. And that one play is put me where I'm at today. And so I ended up scoring a touchdown. And of course, when you score a touchdown, the play is over, right? And so I'm turning towards everyone, and I see something out of my peripheral vision on my right side. I have no idea what it is. I just see something. I feel contact about shoulder high, and then I hear a loud pop, and both of us go to the ground. And that day, only one of us returned to our feet. So, and that's what happened with that. And I was paralyzed instantly from there.
And, as I read this story and I hear you say it out loud, um, we think that playing football, baseball, walking across the street, they're all normal, everyday activities. And we should be able to do them with the confidence that we're not going to get hurt. But the word accident is just that, it's an accident. Something happens that typically wouldn't happen. But then what? So now you're here lying on the ground. I mean, did you instantly know that you were paralyzed?
Yeah, the sad thing is, I even said this with Demario the other day. I said, it's like winning the lottery. People say it's 1 out of 1 million chance you get a spinal cord injury playing football, or 1 in 1 million chance that he takes his hit. And say, basically we won the lottery, basically. Not a good lottery, but we won the lottery. And so, yeah, instantly, as soon as I went down, I tried to get up because the guy was all excited about he tackled me. But again, the play was over with. And I was left-handed, but I got hit on the right side. So I thought my collarbone was broken on my right side with that pop. And so I lift my head to get up because I was going to try to fight him one-handed. And I lift my head to get up, and nothing came up with me, just my head come up. My shoulders didn't come up, my arms didn't come up, definitely legs didn't come up. And put my head down. He made some other comment, and I said, man, I'm really going to get up now. And I tried again, still nothing followed. And then the old adage, they say three's a charm. So
Yeah.
I tried the third time. Yeah, I was paralyzed instantly as soon as that popped. The dislocation in my fourth and fifth, sixth vertebrae, three vertebrae got broken, dislocated that day. So
I'm assuming somebody realized it was an emergency and got emergency help to the field.
I would
So
love to get back with some of these people back then, just to thank them for, because one guy, I don't know what they call him today, but back then he was going like an EMT or a paramedic or something, does the ambulance thing.
right.
Today it may be paramedic engineer, I don't know, but he was going to be that. That's what he was studying. And so when he realized what was going on, all of a sudden he took charge and hollering for someone to run to his room to get his stethoscope and his blood pressure kit, bring pencil and paper, bring a blanket to cover me up, and he was trying his best to get me from going into shock. And then he gives this information, my blood pressure and everything, and to the ambulance once they come to pick me up to, so it gave them a little head start on what's going on. And I would love to get together, but I don't know the guy's name. I was only in college there for 2 weeks. I wouldn't know how to get a hold of him, but I wish him and, some others that I wish we could have a big reunion to let them
That would
know
be
that,
wonderful.
to let them know
Absolutely.
that life turned out better than we all thought it would at that time.
So you talked about certain vertebrae that were injured, which caused you to become paralyzed. So now they take you to the hospital, and I'm sure they're contacting your mother and letting her know, which a mother, whether she's a single mom or not, she's really going to be hysterical because her child is hurt. But what was the prognosis they gave you once you got to the hospital and were attempting to treat you?
The county hospital I was at, they didn't really tell me anything. They took x-rays and whatever, but apparently I was more than what they could deal with, because they ended up putting back in an ambulance and shipped me 2 hours back up north to Nashville, Tennessee. And I went to St. Thomas Hospital, and there they did more tests and stuff. And that's when they told me, asked my mother's phone number and stuff to call her. My understanding with talking mom later is they didn't tell her what was wrong, just said your son has sustained a neck injury, but they didn't tell her I was paralyzed. Didn't want to get all
Wow.
freaking out, driving. But my grandmother was a nurse, and so mom went and picked her up to ride with her to Nashville, and we're about 45 minutes away from Nashville, where we originally lived. And my grandmother apparently told my mother, pray it's not a spinal cord injury and he's paralyzed on the way up. her being a nurse, she knew.
Sure.
And so, yep. So, just, yeah, mom came up, and at that point, again, I wasn't moving my neck down. I was able to talk. And, uh, fortunately for me, I didn't die on the field, basically, like Tamari. I was still awake during the whole time. I was conscious, breathing on my own. And so, I can relate to them. But yeah, it was a scary time at that time. Everything I was shooting for, had been working on through high school and early, now is all gone. You know.
Absolutely. So so now they've transferred you and they're identifying what is wrong. Um, w- how did you react? I mean, you knew that something terrible had happened even before they told you. So when they actually told you, did you just kick into gear and go, okay, well, we're going to beat this?
Yeah, because I would think a lot of athletes, and probably a lot of people, whether athletes or not, they had this invincibility that they think they can beat just about anything that's out there. So I went on this invincibility mindset, and I never thought that I would never walk again. I always thought I walk maybe with a limp or something, but I knew baseball would be over with. But I've never really at that time thought that walking would really be out of the equation in life. And so it just that invincibility, and knew that. And my brother gave me some good advice that all the hard work I put towards baseball and everything, now it's time to direct it to get the best that I can here. And then when I went back to college, to use all this to study and stuff.
Absolutely. And, I think we all have it in us to create opportunities from the challenges we face. Some of us choose not to use that ability. Um, and I know that, and it's far from the, same thing, but um, I sustained a fall on the ice 7 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew immediately I couldn't get up. I felt this heaviness in my leg. Um, I just didn't know what was wrong, but I knew something terribly was wrong. And it was 8 o'clock in the morning, and I'm lying next to my car on the ice, screaming for help. Most of my neighbors have gone to work. My son is upstairs in the house sleeping. And to make a long story short, finally a neighbor heard me. The first thing she said to me was, "Do you want a blanket?" And I thought that was the most absurd question. But I realize now why she did, because I was in shock and I was lying on the ice and I was actually sticking to it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and it took many hours after they transferred me to the hospital to tell me what was wrong. But I kept hearing people talking around me, you know, oh, it's her femur, it's her hip. Um, she broke her back. And I'm thinking, oh my God, if I broke my back, am I ever going to walk again? What am I going to be able to do? And so I kept thinking about, okay, well, um, I can still do all the things I do, except I'll have to do it in a different way. And I kept prepping myself. I don't know where that came from, because that's typically not who I am. Usually
Mm-hmm.
it's, oh, woe is me. So my question to you is, if they told you all this, did you sort of think to yourself, okay, I'm just going to work through it because I'm still young?
What had happened is, when I was laying on the field and realized I was really paralyzed at that time, a man named JT popped in my head. I met JT when I was 12, 14 years old. My grandfather was in a nursing home, and I used to go visit my grandfather. And about 2 rooms before I got to my grandfather, this new guy had been brought into the nursing home. And I was walking by, and all of a sudden, one day I heard someone say, "Hey, bud, come here." And I go into his room and talk to him for a minute, and he asked me would I hold the water, uh, the cup with the straw in it, so he can get some water. And so I held it for him and everything. And he was just bent over, laying in bed, his arms crossed like this. And he had been in his mid-30s. And I remember meeting JT and found out later he was in a car accident and he was paralyzed. So I'm laying on the field thinking of JT, and then I'm going to be 19 years old in a nursing home. That's my first thinking, because I've never really been around someone with a spinal cord injury. I've seen disabled people growing up before, especially visiting grandfather in a nursing home, but I've never, so I didn't know what to expect other than I'm nursing home bound. But thankfully, God instilled into me and my family that we got determination. We persevere. We push hard. We don't give up easy. And the doctor eventually told my family that they should put me in a nursing home because it'd be too much of a burden for them to provide care. And they decided, talked about it, and we was never really put into it. I came home afterwards, and we started our own little form of physical therapy, and just fought and did the best that we could then.
So, one of the things that I saw in your bio, um, you say A is to accept adversity, B, begin battling, and C, conquer challenges. So, let's start with A. How do you accept adversity? A young guy at college, you said only a couple of weeks at that point, your dream was to play baseball. And now you have to face going home, creating a wellness program, so to speak, and get on with your life and be paralyzed.
Well, the wellness program you're talking about is learning to redress again, learning how to get in and out of bed and transfer in a wheelchair, learning how to transfer to get a shower, transfer, eating, feeding myself again. So learning to redrive again. I mean, it's just doing everything all over again. And so, yeah, the wellness then is at that point was just to get as far as we can go, and then see how far we can get, and then get extra help, from there. But yeah, I'm telling you, just we decided just do the best we can and go forward. I mean, it's we knew it wasn't going to be an easy road, again, because we've never been through this. We don't know anybody's spinal cord injury, and we don't. I mean, there was stuff we probably should have asked that we didn't ask because we didn't know to ask. And I mean, that's stuff we learned later on, and
Exactly.
especially when you find other people that are spinal cord like yourself. And so, but I'm just so grateful that again, if I know some other people, whether it's spinal cord injury or whatever's going on, that they don't have their family support system, and they have put them in a nursing home because they didn't want to deal with it. And I'm just so fortunate of that. So to get to the short of the long here, I teach the ABCs, and what I do is tell people, once you accept your adversity, accept your challenge that's going on, the quicker you can heal and move forward. Okay. So the first 5 years of my injury, I went to 18 different rehabs trying to find that cure to walk again. 18 rehabs, gone as far as Pennsylvania, Miami, 2 or 3 places in Tennessee, Atlanta, 18 different rehabs trying to find that cure. And every time I come back, I got a little more depressed because I hadn't got what I wanted, what we're working for. And so, yeah, tell people the sooner you can accept, the sooner you can heal and move forward. It took me 5 years to finally go, all right, this is what it's going to be. Now let's play the game. Okay. And the last rehab I went to, it's not, at that time, it wasn't a lie. It turned out being a big, big, bold faced lie, but it wasn't. And what happened is I finally accepted things as it was. And again, it took me 5 years. I mean, if I could have done this 4 years earlier, I mean, maybe
Sure.
ahead of the game. Who knows? I mean, everybody's different. I've met other people seem like after 30 days they go, all right, cool, let's do this. And then other people, like me, 5 years. But um, but what had happened was the last rehab I went to, we come home and a couple of days later, I told my family, I said, here's where the lie came in. It's not that I'm giving up trying to walk again, but we need to put it on the back burner because if I'm going to have any type of life, I need to go back to college because I, again, didn't know anybody in a wheelchair, a spinal cord injury, could do anything else in life. I didn't know. And so I thought I would have to have a degree to get out and do something.
Sure.
And so again, so the lie was again, which wasn't meant to be, that I wasn't going to quit, but we'll put it in the back burner and then do this. And but years later, it ended up being a big lie. I've been to rehabs before afterwards, but it's not for trying to walk. It's trying to transfer better, get the arm strength better, and is that so? But I think it was something that, especially me and the family, we needed to hear it. We needed to hear it was time to move on.
And I'm sure that wasn't easy, but I think from your story, you sort of knew that was the answer because you had been through so much. Um, and, rehab is as great as it is. One of the things that you've learned that sometimes the rehab is training us to live differently. And
That's what I learned. Yes, I mean it wasn't their job is to try to make life as easy as possible in your situation because again, there's no guarantee you're gonna get anything back. Whether it's a spinal
exactly,
cord injury, whether it's a stroke, whether you're amputee, blind, whatever, and they're trying to help you still live a good life in your situation. And if you get better, that's just more to it.
exactly. So going to college now, um, you're going totally in a different mode because the first time you went to college, you walked in and you were going to play baseball and you were an athlete. Now you're in a wheelchair, so you have to learn how to maneuver around the campus. And you have to know how to maneuver around people who don't understand injuries. They're going to look at you in the wheelchair and think, oh, I'll let James sit over there because there's something wrong with him and I'm going to sit over here. And the reality of it is that wheelchair is your legs.
Yes.
It has
Yeah.
nothing to do with what's in your brain, what's in your heart. And so did you come across that type of behavior from other students or teachers?
Yeah, when I first went to college again, it was to play baseball and hopefully get drafted, and had no intention of ever graduating. I was going in just cause to get the draft part. It was what I was hoping on. But yeah, I come to find out early that there's basically three types of people for this situation. You got the ones that are going to help you. You got the ones going to stay away from you, and then you got the ones in the it's in there as well that they want to overhelp. I mean, they want to do everything for you. I can turn that paper right there, but and which is great and fine. But uh, let us try it and let us ask for help. Just
Absolutely.
don't assume it. But I come to find out there's a bunch of great people out there that are still. I mean, we hear how hard the world, how bad it is nowadays. Like, we're hearing about, I don't know, 18% of the bad stuff going on, but we're hearing 95% of that 18% is bad. If we heard about what's really going on good and great, we'd all have a better attitude.
Well,
So,
and that's one of the reasons that I do this podcast because I was going through some challenges, nothing like what you're going through, but they were big to me. And I
mhm.
kept thinking, am I the only one going through this? And when I asked some of my immediate friends, they looked at me like I was a crazy woman. But yet when I put it out on social media, all of a sudden I had people responding to me saying, "Oh my God, yes, that is a real diagnosis. Oh, yes, I've been there." And it was like, then we've got to talk about these things. We have to be more accepting, number one, of ourselves, because if you didn't accept yourself right now, James, it'd be difficult for people to want to be in your life. But you've accepted that, hey, I went to college, I'm getting a degree, and you're doing so much more. So, what drove you to being the um, podcaster, the coach, the influencer out there to help others?
But when I went back to college, what I want to do is I didn't care to be a teacher, but I knew I had to be a teacher to be a coach. Nowadays, you don't have to do that, but I knew you had to be a teacher to be a coach. And so part of my therapy is my brother and I, we coached a 13 to 15-year-old baseball team. And we actually started with a little 9 and 10, 12-year-old teams. But it ended up being a form of therapy for me because I'm on the ball field. I get to still participate somehow, teaching other people how to play the game. And so that was good. So that when I went back to college, it was to be the teacher coach. That way I can still have that form of therapy. And you mentioned a great thing here when you was talking about you got on social media and found out, man, there's more of this than people are letting me believe. And that goes into letter B, ABC. B, begin battling. What do we do to battle? We find information of people who's been through what we've been through and how do they overcome it. Because you're not going to think of everything.
Absolutely.
Again, obviously, if you've never been in it before, so you don't know what to think and ask. And so now with this stuff at the end of our fingertips, this information, we can find out what other people did to go through what you're going through, and then get an organization, association, get a minister, get a life coach, get a mentor, get someone that's been through, and get some advice, and then see. Let's pass it forward. When we conquer the challenges, now let's take everything we've done in A and B and do the best we can in life and then pay it forward as well.
I love it. I love it. And it sounds like you have a very cohesive family. Your brother, was willing to, I don't know if he changed his plans to coach with you, but, he worked with you. And, sometimes we see siblings who sort of want to pull away because they don't want to be the responsible one. But that's not what happened in your family, which I think is a beautiful testament to your mom. She raised some good kids.
Yeah, again, there's three of us. He's the oldest one. I'm the middle, and we got the younger one. And the younger one passed away way too early. He
Mm.
was 2 weeks before turning 38. But I honestly can say I wouldn't be where I'm at if they hadn't sacrificed so much for me. So yeah, they have really to make sure that I stayed involved in life to be able to get when I was going to school working on my bachelor's degree, it was about an hour away from where I live. And so I'd come home for the weekends and go back on Sunday and do my class, come back Friday, and my older brother would follow me in his car, driving an hour away to help make sure I got into the dormitory to take my clean clothes that mom had cleaned the weekend. And he would eat supper with me and then drive an hour back and do this every Sunday night with me just to make sure I got there. And yeah, my family, I wouldn't be where I'm at if they hadn't sacrificed so much for me.
And that is wonderful. And it sounds like that, you're really involved. And I think it's interesting when you said when you went to college initially, it wasn't to get a degree. When you went back to college, not only did you get your bachelor's, but you got your master's. That shows that you realized, hey, there's so much more that I can do. Would it have been great to play in the majors? Yeah. but you know what? That's not where I'm supposed to be. This is where I'm supposed to be, and I'm going to do the best that I can do at it.
And I was a teacher coach for 12, 14 years. And right at the end, right there, when I finally got out of teaching, is I went back to get my doctoral degree. And so ended up completing it. But what had happened, life came and kicked me in the teeth again. And life would do that every time you get your smooth sailing, all of a sudden there's going to be your Titanic iceberg. It's going to take you back down again. And this is when my younger brother had died. And what had happened is um, he was an alcoholic, but he was one of them a functional alcohol. He'd work all day, then come back and drink. And so we noticed he was turning jaundice. And so I got him to go to the hospital, and he was there for a week. And they told him if he continued drinking the way he was, they gave him a 5% chance, no, a 10% chance to live 5 more years.
Wow.
And so he tried the old cold turkey thing and didn't work. And then his great buddies didn't want to drink alone, so they got him back into it. And so, but I had some health issue at that time too. I got bit by a brown recluse on the bottom of my foot. And so now here I've been independent for 23 years. I've learned to dress myself, get in and out of bed, drive again, got a job and everything. Only thing I wasn't doing is mowing my own grass outside, which I know other people with wheelchairs. I know you can do it, but more power to you, not me. Okay, on the mowing the grass.
Yeah.
And so, but so my younger brother, when he was in the hospital, he was an auto mechanic, and they told him they found during a week an ulcer and a hernia, and told him don't pick up anything heavy with the motors so don't tear anything with the ulcer or hernia. One night, because of this brown recluse bite that I had, and a sore got to be about the size of a tennis ball, they had to cut all that dead tissue away. And so I got where I couldn't transfer into bed. I could get out of bed, but my bed was too high for me to get in by myself. But again, it was high enough it made it easy getting into the chair.
Right.
So I couldn't get into bed one night, and my brother coming to help me in bed, and that night he died. And so I felt responsible for his death because they said don't pick up anything heavy. And so I went on an attempted suicide 3 times in 3 days, try to get out of here because feeling just so bad that if I would have got in bed, he might be alive. And so here's the other thing, and I should have done this a long time ago. Don't be afraid to talk to a counselor, psychiatrist, psychologist. I mean, I grew up that men didn't talk.
Right.
You get hurt, put dirt on it and rub it in and go. But after this, I talked with a psychologist for a year, and I had to learn that my brother, he come to do the loving thing, try to help me so I can go back to school and teach the next day. And he wasn't mad, but it took me a while. So anybody, if you're going through anything, I mean, please don't be afraid to open up and talk. You don't want to go to a psychiatrist or a psychologist. Find a good friend that would listen and shut up and not spread rumors. A minister, a counselor, call a hotline and lie about your name and talk to somebody that can give you some advice. Don't hold this stuff in. Don't hold this stuff in. And that's what I was grown up taught to do. So
Well, so many of us were. My mother used to use this phrase, don't hang your dirty laundry for the neighbors to see.
Yep.
And as a young kid, I looked at her like she was, crazy. Like, well, no, Mom, I'd wash it first.
Yeah.
And then when I got older, and especially when I started podcasting, she said to me, why do you do this? People know so much about you. And I said, sometimes it's like a therapy, because if I can admit something and then somebody like yourself or someone else says to me, I've had a similar experience. This is what I did. Now, I may not do what you did because it may not be right for me, but I might be able to see through it and say, okay, maybe I should try something else. And I think that's what you are talking about is go get that person who's not going to judge you, who's going to listen, who might actually get you some additional help that
Hmm.
you're sort of asking for without actually asking. And it's like you said in the beginning, you and your family didn't know the right questions to ask. You learned them along the way, but you didn't know them in the beginning. So how could you ask them? But today with social media, with podcasting, with blogs, there is so much information out there.
Hmm.
So how can our listeners find you, James, if they want to know more or they need support along the way? Because none of us are going to get through life alone. We all need people in our life.
That's right. A great support system. So is what we need. And I want to thank you for your podcast and what you're doing. You're helping so many people. And one thing I've had to learn with my podcast and with my book and other things is that once I survived, the reason I started my podcast and YouTube channel and stuff is my therapist said, you got a voice. God didn't take you for whatever reason. You've got a place, still got a plan for you. He's going to use you, and you need to get out there and help other people. And so I'm sure you know as well as I do. And there's a lot of times we're not going to know anybody, but they're listening on your podcast, reading somewhere something about you, and they're thankful that doing what you're doing. And I want to thank you for doing what you're doing to help out
Well,
other
thank
people
you.
again, as well as we know we're not going to know everybody, but there's somebody one day is going to reach out and thank you and tell you how you help them. And so I'm just letting you know. For me, most people, it's easier. I go by the tag professor of perseverance. So John Bentley, a friend I met in a speaking association, one day he goes, "Hey, professor of perseverance," and he's behind me. I didn't know he's talking to me, and he goes, "Professor of perseverance." I mean, I heard him say it, but I thought he talked. And finally, John goes, "James, hey, John, how's it going?" He said, "You're the professor of perseverance." I go, "What?" He said, "Well, you got a doctorate degree, right?" I said, "Well, yeah, so you're a professor. All right. And you want to talk about perseverance, don't you?" "Yeah." "All right, you're the professor of perseverance." So people look up professor of perseverance and you'll find my YouTube channel. You'll find podcast. You'll find other things where I've been around with the professor of perseverance.
Well, that is wonderful. And, again, for anybody listening, we all have challenges in life. And when it's happening to us, it's the biggest, most enormous challenge. I know some of my listeners will laugh if I share this. I'm going to, because hopefully we can get a little laugh out of it. My youngest son, his love too was baseball, and he'd been working for the Guardians here in the Cleveland area.
Oh, wow.
And he had
Okay.
just hit a point. He wasn't going to go anywhere else. Okay. And he said to us one day, I have to start looking out of state for jobs. And he's 32 years old, capable of living on his own, but he was still living at home. And all of a sudden, we find out that he gets a job in the Dallas Fort Worth area, and he moved and he's doing well. But for 3 days after he left, my biggest obstacle was, what am I going to do? He's over 1,000 miles away. He's all alone. And I thought it was the worst thing. And I cried about it, but I wrote about it. I got online and I talked about it. And I started realizing I moved away from my parents when I was 21 years old. So, a big difference. And all of a sudden I started looking, okay, there's some challenges here, but we can get through them. So whatever your challenge is, it's going to hurt. But listen to others. Gain the knowledge that you need, because we only live this one life, and let's live it to its best.
Yeah, one little thing that I mentioned to people is what's significant to someone else on there, we may be going, what? You what? Like, but put it in this perspective. Let's just say we get up one night in the middle of the night, 3 o'clock in the morning, when we go to the bathroom or get a drink of water, whatever. But then we kick the door jam with our toe. And for most of us, we're going to miss an hour of sleep because our toe is throbbing, but nothing major happened, right?
Right.
But what if this is someone with the brittle bone disease? Now they've shattered their toes, or they're a hemophiliac. Now they're bleeding internally. And so, what again, we think may be okay, sure, it may be life threatening world to them. And so, I try not to judge anybody if they're going through anything, again, because I'm not going through it, and we're all built differently. And so, we just pray the hope the best for everybody and go from there.
Absolutely. Well, we wish you the best, James. Come back and visit us again in the future, because the professor of perseverance is riding high right now. And we are so glad that you were on Avoid the Maze. Thank you
And I
so
appreciate
much.
the opportunity to be here. Thank you.
Have a great day now. Bye-bye.